happy Wednesday to the world out there, and welcome back to our most favoriteest Zeb of all time. Zeb, welcome back. Ross, welcome as always. Gentlemen, we got some Seahawks to talk about.
Yeah, we certainly do.
I don't know if it's great stuff to talk about, but we got a lot to talk about.
Now, these boys are going to get a talking to tonight.
Yeah, Zeb, I don't know if you had a chance to recap the podcast, but Ross and I were very down last week. I don't know how else to categorize it, because we were coming off that tough Buffalo loss, and then we were both very, very down about the Seahawks. Ross, I don't know how you would characterize that last podcast, but I felt like we were pretty Debbie Downers.
I had a good beat. I could dance to it. I gave it a 7.
Okay. I feel you.
It wasn't the most optimistic Mr. Rogers type podcast of all time. But it might have delved deeper into reality than some.
Do you feel
there might have been like a smack dab of reality right there in the middle of my pipe dream, and I didn't appreciate it.
So you say reality, but do you think that it was also just, I don't know if it's like just kind of realization that, there are just a lot of things that broke their way when they started the season 5-0, and now they find themselves 1-3 in their last 4 games?
Having 5 touchdowns in a game thrown by your quarterback will enable you to put on some pretty rose-colored glasses and see a lot of half-full cups and rainbows and lollipops. And then you get to the reality where, it was funny because I mostly felt like I mostly feel like I'm pretty objective, but I am human and I can have blinders on as well. And it's funny because I can even remember saying things in our podcast that should have given me pause and but I wasn't heeding them. They didn't affect my spirit, right? My brain knew, my brain had some warning signs going off, but it was fun, man, to be 5-0 for the first time ever. And so it's a lot funner to focus on the positive sometimes. And I think we all were. And I think we all, I don't know, some of us still want to, but
right.
You're still talking about not a bad defense, a historically bad, record-setting in a bad way defense. And that's a lot to ignore.
So, Zeb, one of the things that we kind of talked about, Ross, we were just basically pouring buckets of water on each other constantly in the podcast last week. The one thing that I remember is when we talked about it last week, Ross and I think were of different mindsets. In that Buffalo game, from the onset, I kind of felt like things were just breaking bad for us. In this game, I didn't feel as bad about the outcome until it was kind of really, really finalized. When they had the ball with 4 minutes left, I thought, we still have a legit chance to pull it out. I don't think I really had that in the game, even when we ended up scoring and it was 27-20 in the Buffalo game. I kind of felt like, well, we scored to make it 27-20, but they still have the ball and they might score this time and it's going to be over.
It's their serve.
Whereas I felt like the Seahawks, even though they didn't play particularly well, I thought they had a lot of chances, and then just bad turnovers just kind of killed it. And I think that's what kind of soured the game for me, is that I thought there's still a lot of things that they can do and make this game very winnable for the Seahawks, especially because I thought the defense played somewhat okay in the second half. It could be that the Rams just kind of took the foot off the pedal and they kind of just cruised. But I thought they had a chance.
The Buffalo game to me felt like the rest of our shootouts this year, that as long as we just kept scoring, we'd stay in the game. Whereas the Rams game felt like we kind of really, they just took our legs out. We couldn't even score the points we're supposed to be able to score. And so for me, the Rams game felt more defeating. It felt more like this team isn't good enough right now. Whereas in the Bills game, I thought we at least had the chance to hang with them. So I think I'd have to say that my optimism has been quelled even further the last two games.
So Ross,
Okay,
you were pretty optimistic about the Buffalo game. How did you feel as a counter in this Rams game?
The Buffalo Bill game was a large eye opener to me, and I think I spent more time on the all 22 after that game, trying to figure things out a bit more, and I didn't come to a lot of good conclusions. And so by the last podcast, even I didn't feel particularly good going into the Rams game. I sent a message to you guys, my Rocky message, essentially. Like in the original Rocky movie, it's a pretty uplifting movie, and you know they build that's a slow burning movie, and you see him like when he gets this shot of the title, and he's working out, he's training, and Mickey's positive, and he's positive, and if you're watching it for the first time, you're like, holy crap, this guy's gonna go in and win. But then like they throw you a downer. Right, the night before the fight, he walks down because he lives in the neighborhood of the stadium, apparently, the arena, and he goes in, and then he goes back, and he tells Adrian, like, I can't win, and I had that sort of that the night before, because the games happened in the morning for me. The night before, I had that moment. I was looking over. One more time I went over the tape, although it's obviously video in the cloud. And I went over the injury report, and I think I texted you guys. I texted a bunch of people like, we don't have the horses right now, and we don't have I don't know what's going on, but we don't have the defense, and I didn't think we were going to win. It's been a long time since going into a game I thought we can't win. And it was depressing.
That's brutal. Real quick, Tommy Legit on the chat asks, are we going to beat Arizona or what? Usually we save our predictions for the end. But Tommy, I will make sure that we at least tweet you our expectations for the game. So yeah, I kind of feel like we were all in the same boat. But what's interesting is that both of you were very, very down. Like I was down for this Ram game. And even though I did not expect Seattle to win, I thought they would be competitive. And for the most part, I thought they had glimpses of it. And what failed them was bad execution on third down defense and then just brutal turnovers. Not all of them were necessarily Russell Wilson's fault. I actually honestly forgot we had a backup center until that botched shotgun snap. So that was really disappointing to see. But yeah, I think everyone is kind of that same mindset. And what's interesting is I feel like people are taking out their frustrations for the Seahawks in very different ways. I don't know if that's the way that you guys are feeling, but I definitely felt when I was online, obviously it's a short week because we have a Thursday night game, but I definitely feel as if the anger and the frustration in the Seahawks world, which is not necessarily the most greatest place to be, they were definitely ready for massive sweeping changes all of a sudden.
Everybody loves the idea of massive sweeping changes.
Yeah. Tommy chiming in again saying turnovers are a killer. Yes. Russell Wilson has 10 turnovers in the last three plus games. He has 10 interceptions this year. The most interceptions Russell Wilson has ever thrown in a year is 11. Mm-hmm. It's definitely something that is very unfamiliar, I think, to Seahawk fans. And there's a lot of different theories out there, and we'll kind of talk about that. That actually leads us to topic number 1. So, Ross, topic number 1, what I want to know from you, what has a greater chance of improving this year? Russell Wilson's turnover rate or the defense's communication? I feel like a lot of people are saying the reason why the defense is doing so poorly is communication, whether that's from the coaches to the players or the players on the field themselves. What has the best chance of actually improving this year?
For the whole year, or from last game to this coming game?
If you want to just say, like, in this next game that we're going to play against Arizona, I would love to know.
I mean, they're probably both going to improve because there's only really one direction you can go. Right now, Russell Wilson's turnover rate, interception to touchdown rate, not even including the fumbles, is only 2.8 to 1, which, like, in 1978, that's world beating, and now it's not very good. And but that's probably his floor. Like, you get the up times where you go 3 games, only get 1 interception, you threw a bunch of TDs, and then you have the games that go bad. So, I mean, the ratio is going to get better. The question is it going to get good enough? And if they're going to, I don't know. The defense, man. I don't know, man. I can't figure out what's wrong. I don't know what's wrong. We have starters out. We're missing both cornerbacks, but I don't know if they were playing. I don't know if they were playing that great when they were in. So I don't know. I guess the Russell Wilson turnover rate is likely to get better before anything else because, like I said, right now it's kind of adjusted to the low, so it's gonna fall back towards the median. So yeah, I expect that to be. It doesn't mean I expect if they continue to. Man, are we gonna get in a fight right now? If they go into the whole like let Russ cook the whole season long, and all it is like Russ passing and passing and passing, and well, that's gonna lead to a lot more interceptions, and not just double. You don't like double the passing, so you only double your interceptions. You double passing, but you probably triple your interceptions because now you're passing situations you didn't do it before. Now you're passing situations, where it's they used to like use the pass in key situations, pinpoint situations where they knew they had it, and now you're just passing when you're going to pass, and the other team knows you're passing. And so again, like you don't just double your interceptions when you double your rate of passing. You probably triple it, or maybe even worse. Who knows? Because now you're throwing in situations where it's not appropriate. Now you're relying on linemen who are recruited to do something else to do something all game long that they're not best at. Now you don't. Now you have Russell Wilson knowing that he has to do everything, and all of a sudden his confidence, instead of like having the confidence to hit that bomb once every quarter, becomes the confidence he thinks he has to make every play, and he can make every play all game long. So that confidence is going to strain to overconfidence. And it's just a bad, in my opinion, not a great formula for how we've built the team. We don't have the defense to play the kind of offense they want to play.
Yeah, it's kind of the chat message that we were having during the game was holding serve, which is obviously a tennis term saying that as long as you control your serve, you're going to win more, and you just have to kind of like do just enough because you'll get the ball last. That's exactly what matters. You have the ball last. You're going to take a lead, or you're going to like hold on to it. That's the idea, right?
And I don't quite buy into this thing that's a linear attachment that like Russ feels he has to score every time he has the ball, and that's exactly why he's doing this stuff. I don't feel he feels pressured like that. I just think it's sort of statistically has to come back, and I think that it's not like a mental pressure. It's just a situation where like you're asking him to throw the ball in a situation in the last game or last season, you would have run the ball.
Right.
And so there's just going to be, again, if you love Russell Wilson's optimism, how he expects the best results for everything he does, that's going to have a lot of great results for you. But you're also going to have to live with the reality that sometimes that clouds his vision a little bit. It always has.
That's actually a point I wanted to kind of emphasize, because you brought that up last week where you said one of the greatest things about Russell Wilson is that he has such positivity. He thinks he will succeed regardless of the odds, regardless of the chances. So he's going to make those throws that most people would never make. And it's kind of like the anti-Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has a really low turnover rate because he will often check out of a play. He'll
Aaron Rodgers
to throw the ball out of bounds because he won't take that risk.
Yeah.
Zeb, what about you? What's your ideas on what is going to improve first, or has a greater chance to improve? Russell Wilson's
Yeah,
turnover
what an
rate.
assumption that something's going to improve.
Well, look, it was one thing to have the worst defense in the history of the league when
Boo!
our quarterback was playing lights out at an MVP level. It's a whole nother thing to have this defense when Russell's not playing very well. I mean, he's not playing terrible by any means, but he's making enough mistakes that that balance is gone. You know what I mean? We're at a point now where the defense is so bad and we can't count on the offense to score the points needed to pull these games off, especially these close games as most of them have been this season. All season long, I've felt like this defense is going to get healthier, and as it gets healthier and these guys get to play together, they're going to get better. I don't know that I feel like that's the case anymore. It's just been disappointment after disappointment with a handful of exceptions. And at this point, I don't know that I trust the system or the coaches enough to believe that they're going to get significantly better in any way. I have to believe at this point that Russell is the one that's going to have to do it. This has been a season in kind of three parts, right? Like the way we looked at it, the first 4 or 5 games, 5-0, knocked it out of the park. Then we knew we had some tough ones coming up, but we knew that if we could get through those and win a couple of them, we had a good stretch coming up where we basically were, thanks to our 5-0 start, all but guaranteed to make the playoffs no matter how this team is playing. So we may be lucky on that front, but at this point, I need Russell Wilson. We need Russell Wilson to tighten up his game and not make some of those silly mistakes and take this offense to where it needs to be and score the points that we need to score in order to win some of these damn games.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the situation that the Seahawks find themselves in. Just based upon what can be controlled and what we've seen so far, I think by default, Russell Wilson's turnover rate is the one that's more likely to improve because a lot of these are things that he's doing. He's making a decision that I think most of us would not want him to make. The fumbles, I think those are a little bit tougher because, those are sacks. He's getting stripped of the ball. He's not necessarily making a mistake in those situations. But the interceptions, I feel, have been particularly terrible. In the game yesterday, I don't even remember what down it was, but there was a wide open, third of the field where there's only one person between Russell Wilson and the end zone. And he just throws this ball, and he throws the ball late because he gets flushed out of the pocket, but it allows the safety to run over and pick off the ball that was going to go to Will Dissly. And everyone at the time, whether it was in a chat that they were doing or a message board or if they were on Twitter, everyone was asking, what was Russell Wilson doing? If anything, he had an easy first down. Potentially, if he shakes the guy, he could have walked in for a touchdown. He had that much open space.
The throw wasn't even just like a normal throw. It was across his body while moving to his right, kind of right forward.
He's drifting towards the line of scrimmage to his right and throws left into the end zone.
I mean, he's we all know he's the ex-baseball player, so he moves and throws better he throws on the run, throws on the move better than most people, of course, but it's still never ideal to throw not just across your body, clear to the opposite corner across your body while moving forward and in moving in the opposite direction.
Right. And I think to kind of add to that, on paper, if that's a touchdown, it's like a 17-yard touchdown. I forget where they were in the end zone or the red zone. But from where he's throwing that ball, it's like a 30-yard throw. He's throwing across the field, diagonally. He's running away from
X squared plus Y squared equals Z squared.
Yeah, we're getting a little Pythagorean theorem going. But I think that's kind of what's hard to really think about. But I think Russell Wilson has to be the one to improve because the defense, there's so many more moving parts when it comes to our defense, and I think a lot of us are very frustrated and concerned about what they can do to improve. And because it hasn't happened yet, I just not sure.
I want to interrupt one real quick. I don't want to misconstrue my comments as I'm laying this at the feet of Russell Wilson, because without Russell Wilson, we're never even close on that game. We're never even anywhere near this discussion. We never were 5-0 to start. Although I think he has to improve, and I think the interceptions, are his fault in a sense. It's kind of like, do you remember a few seasons ago we had a kicker and you guys consistently condemned him, and I refused to condemn him even when I admit he should have made the kick, because I said basically you have to accept it. Like when you say like you're going to moneyball the kicker position and spend $500,000 on it instead of $2 million, even though every time a kicker kicks the ball, it's points or not. If you are one of those people who thinks the kicker doesn't matter, then you just have to accept that. Like that's just part of the game. You decided those rules, and you have to just play with it, right?
No,
so
you're talking about Blair Walsh, right?
Yeah, it's like exactly. I didn't like Blair Walsh. I didn't want him as a kicker, but like once they had him, like I thought there's no point in complaining about him, because that was like if you didn't have him, there was if you had a different kicker, then there was one other player on the team you didn't want, because like they just decided to save money there, right?
Right.
Same thing. If you decide you're going to throw the ball 40 times a game, then obviously you're going to have more interceptions. So I don't like them, and they can be eliminated. We can all get better at whatever we do as a job or whatever we do as a hobby. We can all get better. I want Russell Wilson to be better, but at the same time, I don't want to sound like I'm blaming him, because that's he is him. You know who he is, and yeah, he isn't a system quarterback, but he actually has benefited. Like people like to argue and get all childish about it. He has benefited from the fact that he was only given responsibility in the key. That sounds weird, but only in the key situations usually in the past. He didn't have to be elite all day long every day. He rises to occasions, but if you're telling him to rise and the occasion is 60 minutes all day long, you're going to get what you get. If that's the football you want to play, if you've made the mistake in thinking that somebody can play their best football for 15 minutes so they can probably play it for 60 minutes, well, that's on you, because he can't. Nobody's
I agree. I 100% agree.
If you think that, oh my God, look how much those runs are wide open in the fourth quarter, if you think that's going to happen all game long every single time, then you're wrong. If you think like, wow, yes, there's unique things about the fourth quarter. There's unique things about how they played football that all came together, that the subtleties and how things mix.
All right. I want to keep this train going, Russ. No, Russ. I want you to continue, because I actually want you to carry this into topic number 2. And topic number 2 is, are Seahawk fans overvaluing how good this team is through 9 games?
I don't know, because how good are they valued? Because like I'm fully expecting this to collapse down to like 6-4, 6-5. So I think we're near a 500 team at this point. Not just because like our defense, but I mean like pure and simple. But like the injuries are just there and they're hurting, and yeah, we're gonna get some guys back, but who knows who else we lose? Like I don't know who we're throwing out at cornerback tomorrow.
It's probably going to be Reed and
Trey
Flowers again.
Yeah, I mean, and then you got to have somebody covering.
Nico is maybe Ugo. Ugo is probably going to play.
Yeah, Ugo. I had no idea Ugo was going to be back last game. Did you? I was all of a sudden surprised to hear his name.
Yeah, I was surprised, because he was kind of like, no one really talked about him, I think, leading up to that game.
Yeah, all of a sudden he was there. It was weird because Nico Thorpe, somebody got mocked on Twitter for saying, how about Nico Thorpe? And some like reporter was like, well, I don't think he'll make it off talking about the fact that he was injured reserve. But like he got activated from injured reserve and did play last game, but now he's out tomorrow again. So, because I guess they must have rushed him back then. Or maybe just this is a completely new injury. I don't know. Nico's not playing. Shaq's not playing. Dunbar's not playing. Carson's not playing. He obviously plays on offense, but you kind of need him. So, man, Are Seahawks overvaluing? We were overvaluing how good the team was when we were like 6-2, probably. At 6-3, I guess it kind of depends on who you're talking to, because I don't know how. I mean, I don't know how delusional people still are. How good do you think they are?
Yes, Ed. How good are they?
Well, you know what? I don't know that I have a particularly good pulse on what the fans are thinking right now.
We're just happy you have a pulse.
I'm pretty lucky to have a pulse. I'm used to these days expecting this team to be good, and therefore having these fans that think like we're constantly the best team in the league. Those fans that like to talk shit on Twitter. We're going to the Super Bowl when it's like week 7. But I don't know. I'm not sure where the fans are in general right now. I think that at 5-0, I had a moment of, are we really this good? Like, because this defense has not looked good, but maybe we have just enough tools to do that, to do it this year. We've had this discussion. Is it sustainable, right? Well, I think it's proven now not to be. And I hope at this point that I'm undervaluing how good the team is, because I am not particularly optimistic about the rest of the year. I'm never the type that's going to throw in the towel, and I think we have a pretty decent stretch of winnable games coming up. But I think with this defense playing at the level that it is, and without Carson being at least somewhat consistently healthy, I just don't know that this team has what it takes to, like Ross said, about a 500 team right now. That's how I feel. So at 6-3, feeling like a 500 team to me is probably, hopefully, undervaluing how good the team actually is.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is I don't disagree with anything you guys have said, but if they go 500 the rest of the year, they're a 9-7, 10-6 team. That probably gets them the 7th seed in the NFC. I still think that this team is a playoff team because of Russell Wilson, because I think that offense, if it can get a little bit healthier, it can actually be quite good. I think the fact that since Chris Carson went down and we haven't had Carlos Hyde, like, we have not had a legitimate complement to Russell Wilson, which I feel like he really needs in order to be his best. Just having a running back to help him for those 60 minutes so he doesn't have to be the most excellent player for the whole game, as Ross was saying earlier. I think that's a really key component that we're missing. And I think that if we had a healthy running back, just someone who was a threat to run the ball, not someone that we had to run the ball, so it wasn't just obvious they're there to like pass protect like Travis Homer kind of is, I think that would really change the way that this team could be used and the way that we could kind of move forward. But yeah, I think you have to look at these 3 losses, most like really the last 2 losses and all the games they've really been close on. There is definitely a lot of concern. In regards to like Seahawk fans and overvaluing him, yeah, I think that a lot of fans basically expect Super Bowl or bust. Like anything less than a Super Bowl, they're ready to shit can anyone, And I think there's a degree that, Seahawk fans are spoiled. But the reality is the Seahawks haven't been to a Super Bowl since the 2014 season. So we're talking 6 years ago. Russ's 3rd year in the league. He's now in his 9th. So that doesn't mean that they're not contenders, that they can't be. But I think what we've seen is we have never been healthy going into the playoffs. I think that's one of their biggest issues. As good as this team has been, I feel like injuries are the thing that are holding them back from us being able to actually see how good they are. And that's something that every team deals with. So it's not trying to lessen their wins and losses, but it's just kind of, to me, there's a lot more what could have been rather than what we're getting. So maybe that is overvaluing in a sense, because I think that if I thought of like the perfectly healthy Seahawks team against a perfectly healthy other team, I would be much more confident than I am right now. And I think that's what's kind of holding me back. And what's weird is they have injuries at positions that I don't think that people seem to really value. Like the fact that we haven't had a real running back, or we're on our 6th and 7th running back. People for years have always like undervalued the role of what a running back does, especially in the Seahawks offense. And I feel like that's something that has been really critical in these last 3.5 games.
It's funny because people, I think, tend to look at stats and go, well, it's the same thing then. I mean,
Right.
if you look at like the Carolina Panthers where Christian McCaffrey has been out and ex-Seahawk, what's his name?
Mike Davis.
Mike Davis has been playing, and his numbers have been really, really good.
But Mike Davis was good when he was in Seattle and San Francisco.
Right. And so if you just look at the numbers as well, you just go, oh, which is really, really good. Can't believe they have the guy. But the offense doesn't run the same. It doesn't bring it's the intangibles. That's what makes football so difficult to evaluate. Mike Davis is not Christian McCaffrey. The offense, he might have similar numbers because he still gets the ball in similar situations, but it's the small things. It's, he's not as much. The defense doesn't react to him how they react to Christian McCaffrey. And so the offense overall ends up running less efficient because other people have more pressure on them and whatnot and so forth. But same thing, the Seahawks, you can go like, wow, I can plug in, Travis Homer and he has similar numbers. Or I can plug in Dallas and he'll have similar numbers. Yeah, but the defense isn't respecting him. It changes the play calling as well. Things that also show up on the stat sheet, the pass blocking, the run blocking, the play call knowledge, the playbook knowledge, rather. It all is different.
Yeah.
And so it changes the game in subtle ways. The offense, Pete Carroll clearly, Schottenheimer is clearly not as comfortable running what he wants to run with DJ Dallas out there or Alex Collins. It's kind of weird that people think it's okay. It's kind of weird. People don't talk enough about the fact that Alex Collins was our main back last game. Like in the preseason, they didn't go out and like hunt Alex Collins down because he was the best running back available. They drafted and seemed comfortable with Dallas. But after one game of him where he scored twice, then the next game they went with Alex Collins. So that tells you, even though you would think that Dallas's 2 touchdown debut was significant and a positive, the coaches evaluated it completely different because they went and started somebody who hadn't played with us.
To be fair, Dallas got some game time in Buffalo, and I think that's where his flaws were exposed. So, yes, they had to get Alex Collins because they felt that they needed that change.
But it's interesting because again, like they didn't. You didn't after they got Hyde. I mean, it's ironic that Hyde was brought in because we knew Carson would be hurt at some point, but now Hyde's hurt at the same time.
Yes,
but they didn't seem panicky about the running back position. I think we were talking about how like we had really good running back depth, but here we are like playing guys who were on the street while we were doing training camp.
We're running into the same issue we ran into at the end of last year, except it's in weeks 7, 8, 9, 10 early, instead of weeks 15, 16, 17.
It feels like that's, like traditionally this is our week 14, 15, 16 problem, right? It's like every year it feels.
I think that point in itself is what I feel is the biggest thing that's lacking. And we'll talk about it in topic number 3, because I know that there are definitely people of the mindset. So people talk about there's a play. It was early in the game. In the first half of the game, Seahawks had the ball. They were not able to convert on a short third and whatever. It's 4th down. Russell Wilson on 3rd down, I think he stretches for the ball. He ends up being short after replay. Pete burns a challenge on it, which obviously I thought everyone thought it was a bad call. But what I thought was most interesting is there are a lot of Seahawks media that were saying, if Seattle had Chris Carson, they would have converted that 3rd down without any problem. Like, the play that they would have run, Chris Carson, he easily gets that, and they don't even talk or even need to think about going for it on 4th. And that made me really think about, what is the value of a running back to the Seahawks game? And I think that's the issue that I would like to see more resolved if Chris Carson ever gets healthy, or if Carlos Hyde comes back. Tony chiming in on the chat saying they got Alex Collins because they're fans of river dancing. Did you guys know Alex Collins practiced river dancing at Arkansas to work on his footwork?
Wait, did he go to Harvard?
He went to the Arkansas, which is like the river dancing Harvard of the U.S.
The river dancing Harvard of the U.S.
Yes.
I bet that's like
Arkansas is like the beard at Harvard.
Yeah.
River
Well,
dancing kind of creeps me out a little bit.
it's quick taps. That's what it is.
It's
Um,
it's scary. It looks a little scary to me. The
let's move
legs seem
on.
to
Let's
like
move on
be
to
on a
topic number three,
different
though.
body.
Zeb, we are going to talk about the Hawks guest corner. Topic number three. I let Ross go first twice, so I'm going to start you off with this one. Topic number three: is Pete Carroll becoming the worst coach in the NFC West right now? This is a topic
That's,
that a lot of people
Weeks
are
after
talking
his
about.
extension.
Just
yeah.
got extended a couple weeks ago before that Buffalo game, but is he kind of losing his shine?
You know, he's pretty. So he's the oldest coach in the division by quite a bit. Yeah. Longest tenured coach in the division by quite a bit at this point. I think that based on where this team is right now, coming off a 2-game losing streak, losing 3 out of 4, historically bad defense, I think it's pretty easy to say that Pete may be on the downslope of his career, and we see a lot of these young, innovative, aggressive coaches all across the league, but particularly in our division right now. And it's hard not to feel like Pete's become a bit stale, and it may be getting to the point where the game has passed him by. But now, this isn't the first time we've felt like that in recent years, and he kind of has that ability to pull things together and ultimately impress you, right? Or at least get you farther than you expected to get at a certain point. So, I'm not ready to call him the worst coach in the West, but I do believe that he's getting to the point where he has more and more ground to make up. You look at the 49ers, and if they have a better luck with injuries this season, it's not at all unlikely that we're staring at 4th place in this division at this point. So, I don't think that it's unreasonable to expect more out of Pete right now than what we're getting.
Ross, what about you? What's your take on where Pete Carroll stands in the NFC West against a Cliff Kingsbury, a Sean McVay, and a Kyle Shanahan?
It's a hard evaluation for me because when you look at the whole of what a head coach does, I don't think it's all immediately apparent. And I think we've talked about a little bit about this in the past, especially last year. For example, one of the biggest things I think a head coach does is create a program and create a culture. And you can't see that. We can't see that. We never have any indication of it except for like kind of third-hand reports from when the player leaves the team and goes to Cincinnati and is like, what? Or when a player comes over like Jamal Adams and says, playing for the Jets was causing him mental health issues, but playing for the Seahawks is what the NFL is supposed to feel like. Pete Carroll has proven that he puts together a type of program that can put you in the Super Bowl. Not every coach's program can. A very, very small. They're not just all. It's not random, right? Certain coaches out of the whole group, out of the whole pool of coaches, are the ones who go to the Super Bowl over and over and over again. It's not random. And so when you have one that has a program that can get you there, you got to value it and you got to hold on to it, I think. It's usually because of the background stuff. The attention to detail and the programming and the culture of competing and things like that. In those areas, I think actually, frankly, we're still ahead because some of these younger coaches they're not even at the point of their career they've even actually thought about that. There's no philosophy in the Cardinals. There's really cool cutting edge coaching about positions and play calling, defensive and offensive, mechanisms and things like that. And that's another important part. And that is the part where I think Pete Carroll is a little bit behind, or there's something wrong with player evaluation. Because the thing is, like, the defense should still work. You say, like, has his coaching fallen behind? Well, they're running his defense in San Francisco. That's his defense, essentially. That's why Sherman's doing well there.
Robert Saleh, former
yeah.
linebacker and assistant secondary coach, I believe, for the Seahawks when they
they're-
won the Super Bowl.
They're literally running their offense. It looks more like Seahawks defensive play calling than ours does right now. So I don't think the game's really passed him by. There's a few things you can nitpick. He's ahead on analytics, but he looks at analytics different. And he actually considers how well your coaching decisions for the situation match and mesh with your philosophy. For example, the fourth down was really dumb last game. I will say that. People think I'm an apologist. It was dumb on like 3 levels. 1, to play the game, 1, to lose the timeout and then not do it, and then it was just dumb. Just go get it. If you're gonna say you're gonna roll with Russ and you're gonna let Russ cook, then you know what? Let Russ get the 6 inches, okay? But I get the fact that he doesn't tie any one decision to only itself. Nothing exists in a vacuum. He minds what the message is on everything he says. It's all a spider web of interconnected things to him. So on that, I still think he's miles and miles and miles ahead. And that's why, even though, we went 5-0, we don't have, some of the stuff that we should have for what we were doing. But we can still get there because of how he does it, his approach and his philosophies of competing and his optimism that expects the best and his visualization that gets out the best. He's still really open-minded. He falls behind in a few things that maybe he needs to figure out that he needs to rework his philosophy, because no philosophy is ever complete. And he probably needs to readjust some things and let a few bits of math in differently than he does now. But I don't think he's fallen behind. I don't think he's the worst. I think the NFL's hard. I think the NFL getting to the Super Bowl is really hard. And he's done it twice. And he hasn't done it for 6 years. But you know what? Like, Dan Marino went to the Super Bowl in his second year and never went back. And we're not doubting how good of a quarterback he is. Like, there's plenty of great quarterbacks who never go at all because it's really hard. The other teams get paid too. So I don't think he's the worst at all. I don't think he's even close to it. I think, again, technically some other teams maybe have a bit more forward thinking on certain kind of play calls, but I don't think some of them have like an overall philosophy to the game, and that hurts them. We've seen the coaches leave Pete Carroll not have the success, so there's something that they're not getting from him, even though they implement the systems. So there's something else. The Pete Carroll magic is not in the play calling. The Pete Carroll magic is in the culture, and you can't match that anywhere else in the league except for perhaps in New England. But you know what? New England is going to have a losing record this year, and Pete Carroll doesn't do losing records anymore.
Yeah, I think both of you are definitely you're in the same vein that I think that. What a lot of people think about, especially when they look at Pete Carroll, is they are looking at, why aren't you winning Super Bowl? You have a Hall of Famer in Russell Wilson. It should be easy. It should be simple. Why are you making it so much harder? But to Ross, your point, other teams are trying to win too. And the advantages that all the other teams in NFC West have is they're young, their coaching trees have not been plucked over. They're getting the best of their situations because they're all super young. They're all getting the guys that they want because they're giving them a lot of times their first shot at being the defensive coordinator, being the offensive coordinator, or, they're allowed to shine and highlight, and they're doing really innovative stuff, which is a credit to them. But what we've talked about in the past is you lose those coaches. Those coaches get picked off because other teams want your success, and it's hard to maintain and keep that support. We talked about that with Sean McVay when the Rams went to the Super Bowl. We probably talked about that last year when the Niners went to the Super Bowl. Your coordinators get plucked by other teams, and you lose that culture, that you lose that facet that makes that young, dynamic team really, really great. Pete Carroll has been able to maintain a level of success that the NFC West has never seen. Each of these coaches in the NFC West, none of them were coaches 4 years ago, I believe. I think that's about the timeline when Sean McVay came in. Kingsbury is only in his second year. Shanahan's in his third year. So Pete Carroll is going into his 10th, 11th year as the head coach for Seattle. That's a really, really long time. He's one of the most tenured coaches. So to throw the word worst out there, I think is definitely a lot of passion, but I think it's definitely misconstrued or misunderstood of what Pete does to keep this team competitive. Because this team is not the Seahawks without Pete Carroll from day one. They wouldn't be the Seahawks even if they were to make a switch, tomorrow. There's so much that Pete does that I don't think fans fully understand. And Ross, one of the advantages that I think that we've talked about is if you read Pete Carroll's book, Win Forever, you have a much greater understanding of that. And I know a lot of people will say like, oh, well, because you've read that book, you're just a sucker for Pete Carroll and you're an apologist. If that's the way you want to take it, I think what it does is you just have a greater understanding of what Pete is trying to do. Whether or not it's successful, whether or not you believe it, you have an idea of what he's trying to achieve. And I think that's what makes me think that Pete Carroll is definitely not the worst coach. The people that do think that, I think they're just a little jaded or frustrated that they're not seeing constant success. But they're in a three-way tie at 6-3. That's not the worst position to be in.
I think there's also he's a little bit of victim of his own success. By having 2 Super Bowl runs early, it's really jacked up expectations. And by having some talent go the right way early on, people expect that. People are like, well, they failed in their draft since then. Well, you know what? That's not going to be very often you get 3 or 4 Hall of Fame people in one draft.
I disagree with that assessment, though. They definitely haven't been wonderful in the draft, but this draft alone, they've got 2 starters, 1 linebacker in the first round, and they've got Damian Lewis. Alton Robinson is getting rotation. DJ Dallas, he got some starts. I wouldn't put him as a plus, but those are 3 guys, 2.5 guys, if you want to really look at it, that are huge to this team.
There have been some lean years,
for sure.
But that's the NFL. If you look at nobody doubts the Patriots. You go look at the Patriots draft record in the past 4 years. It's awful.
Yeah, their best players are all free agent acquisitions.
Yeah. So part of it's just that the draft is a bit of a crap shoot. Getting Metcalf has changed the equations, and I think that's part of what we're talking about. Is DK Metcalf changes the situation, and so now we have to adjust. You didn't know how good he was going to be or how fast he was going to evolve. He's already probably top 5 wide receiver. So fine, if that falls into your lap, then you should take advantage of that. But that means now you have to retool and rethink some of the other stuff, and that's possible, but it might take some time. And that happens to coaches over the years as well. Like Belichick was once like a defensive master. That's what his thing was. Eventually he became known for getting the best out of Tom Brady on the offensive side. Pete Carroll is obviously a defensive coach primarily, but again, he has a coherent, cohesive, holistic approach to the game that includes the offense, and the offense has to complement the defense and vice versa. So a DK Metcalf and let Russ cook maybe finally makes sense, but now it's going to take a little bit of time to work out how does that change the entire holistic approach. What defense should you be playing? If you run first, and that means you should have X kind of defense. But if you're pass first, how does that change the defense? How does that change your defensive play calling? How does it change the defensive players you should get? Yeah. We haven't adjusted. We're still having these players that we're supposed to be for the other system. I don't think Pete knew we were going to let Russ cook. I think it kind of happened.
Yeah. Real quick, Tony chiming in. What's his name with the ATV? That would be Malik McDowell. I don't know how much blame you can put that on the Seahawks. Obviously, he was a character risk, but I don't think that you would envision he's the kind of person that would like damage his brain on the ATV. So
saw that one coming.
We're going to use Zeb's prognostication skills, and we're going to talk about topic number 4 then. Zeb, I want to know, has Kyler Murray surpassed Russell Wilson as an MVP frontrunner?
No.
Whoa, that was quick.
I think he's playing really well, and it's fun to see, and I'm proud of the little guy. And I think it's become en vogue a bit to talk him up, but when it comes down to it, the people who cast votes for this look at statistics, and if he's not top 2 or 3 in passing yards and passing touchdowns, he kind of doesn't have a realistic shot when you're looking at guys like Russell and Rodgers and Brady, even at this point, Patrick Mahomes, guys that are going to score 40 plus passing touchdowns and throw for 4,000 to 5,000 yards. But I suppose Murray still has the chance to catch up in those categories, but as of right now, he's not there. So, in my opinion, he has not surpassed Russell. Russell hasn't done himself any favors in recent weeks, but statistically, he's still tops in the league in touchdowns, first or second or something like that in yards. He still controls his own destiny, in my opinion. Like I said, guys like Rodgers and Mahomes, maybe even Brady, those guys are going to challenge. But I don't think Kyler Murray is there yet, statistically speaking.
It's interesting that you point that out, Zeb. I actually just looked this up real quick. Josh Allen is number 1 in the NFL with 2,871 yards. Russell Wilson's actually second in one less game, and he's passed for 2,789 yards. So,
right.
Kyler Murray, he's down there. He's like 10th. He's like 12th, I think.
But how many rushing yards does he have?
Kyler Murray has a shit ton of rushing yards and touchdowns.
You're going to get 1,000 yards rushing.
Yeah,
right.
Kyler Murray, he has 604 rushing yards and 10 rushing touchdowns.
So he's going to have a 4,000, 1,000 yard season. That's going to do it, man.
I mean, that's essentially how Cam Newton won an MVP.
It's going to depend on the record, but I mean, to be honest, I don't think Russell Wilson's in the MVP talk right now. And it's not because of the yards, it's because of the ratios. If you have 28 TDs, that's great. But if you have 10 interceptions to go with it and your ratio is only 2.8 to 1, that ain't great anymore.
He's got to clean it up, but he's still tops 2 or 3 in the most important categories, and I think that matters.
He's going to finish somewhere around 18 or 19 interceptions, it seems like.
Yeah, it's possible. That's what I'm saying. He has to tighten it up because these last few games have really
I don't think he's a front runner right now at all, to be honest. If he can come back to form as he was earlier, and he's going to have a couple of chances to do it. We get to play the Jets. We get to play a couple other teams that are not there right now. So they have some good games that are coming up. And maybe if actually the goal is to get him the MVP award, like it does seem to, if they're honest, it seems to be in some people's minds a bit. If you want to, go pass heavy against the Jets and get him 6 touchdowns, cool, great. But I think it'd be really, really tough with the situations he's going to face this season for him to be a legit MVP candidate in the second half of the season. Sorry, I'm a bummer.
It's all right. It's fair.
Doesn't mean I think Murray should be, because I think there's a lot more to life than isn't Dalvin Cook actually the MVP right now?
No, he's not the MVP.
Yeah, he is.
That's a 3-5 team, 3-6 team.
Yeah, what's that? But that team's an 0-9 team without him.
Oh, for sure. But the NFL, when it comes to MVP, is unlike.
Wait. So would you take away Cortez Kennedy's defensive player of the year?
Defensive player of the year, I feel, is very different because they do.
Well, that's a 2-14 team.
I know that's what I'm saying, but if you look at the previous 10+ years of MVP awards or defensive player of the year awards, it's a combination of not only statistics, but also how good is your team. There's been no MVP that hasn't been the number 1 or number 2 seed in the NFL.
I'm starting to really hate the MVP award because in the modern NFL, all it means is which quarterback was in the best situation,
exactly,
combined with helped it. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
If you look at all the MVPs in the past few years, it's always been who is the best quarterback on the best quote unquote team. Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Cam Newton, Matt Ryan. There are guys that are sprinkling in there, that no one necessarily, like, I don't think of them as Hall of Famers. I don't think of Matt Ryan or Cam Newton as a Hall of Famer, but they're MVP winners because they had the number one team in the NFL that year. When we think about just comparing Kyler Murray to Russell Wilson, I would definitely edge Kyler Murray as to having right now the better year, but it's also a product of what have you done for me lately, because he had a chance to win in Miami and he couldn't get it done. He had a chance to win against the Buffalo Bills and he threw a Hail Mary with 7 seconds left and it ended up going for a touchdown. So Kyler Murray is definitely benefiting because he's had this really, really high marquee game that we are talking about right now, and Russell Wilson is kind of coming off of a stinker. But I don't think that in the long term, Kyler Murray is going to be the MVP candidate at the end of the year. I think Russell Wilson has a much greater chance of that as we look how this season progresses. I think that people are always going to look at what have you done for me in the last game, and that's really what's going to stick out of people's head. I think Kyler Murray is having a great season. If he can sustain it, maybe he's in the conversation. I don't know if the Cardinals as a whole are the greatest team in the NFC West at this point. I wouldn't say the Seahawks are either or the Rams are. It's still a lot to be determined. But Kyler Murray still has a lot that he needs to work on before I think he's a true MVP frontrunner for the year. He's a great fantasy player for sure, but I don't know if that equates to MVP.
Russell Wilson has more yards and touchdowns right now than Kyler Murray. I think people are excited about Kyler Murray, and I get it, but I just don't see how that adds up to being a front runner over Russell right now.
Because I think it feels like the Cardinals are ascending and we're not.
Yeah, right. You're right. It does. It does. But we're only halfway through the season, so to say he's a front runner and Russell isn't when Russell is ahead of him in all those statistical categories doesn't make sense to me.
Right, but Russell's coasting.
Right. He's not stacking on to his accolades where Murray is starting to climb in his accolades.
Russell's starting to have 0 and 1 touchdown games and multiple interception games. Well, it's not like a one game. I mean, he's only had one game with none, but the game before, I believe, only had one throwing touchdown, and it was late.
Right. But we know when guys cast their votes for this stuff, and we know what guys look at when it comes to the votes that they cast. So
they look at hot wives. So Russ has got it tied up.
I will give it to Russ for hot wife category for sure. Final thoughts on just Kyler Murray and the Cardinals leading into this game. We'll get into some predictions, but
it's gonna be a tough game. I really do believe right now that the Cardinals are probably a better football team than us. So,
well, they're a bad matchup for us right now with their style of offense and with all our banged up defense. But I'm kind of hoping that they somehow reach down deep and find some of the amazing play calling and coordination that they found versus San Francisco, and that some of it shows up because I mean they've got legit wide receivers and we don't have any cornerbacks, so
but
it's going to be heavy.
People forget though that this is a team that the Seahawks were beating by 10 points with like 4 minutes left in the game, and obviously Seattle crumbled, but they had multiple chances to win that game. It's not like
so we also had a couple of players that we don't have now. We're missing our center again, by the way.
Yeah, Ethan Posick is definitely out. I'm not excited about that, and it's not to take away that I think that this is going to be anything close to a cakewalk. I am definitely concerned about this game, but let's get into it. Let's talk about some predictions. We'll be able to get it out. So Tommy, if you're still there, this is for you. Final score, Ross. Cardinals versus Seahawks. What's your prediction?
31-27 Cardinals.
So that's a Cam Chancellor to Jordan Babineau.
If that's what floats your boat.
Yes.
38-27 Seahawks.
I think this game is going to be high scoring. I think it's definitely going to be close. Tommy was a person on the Twitch chat who wanted to know what our prediction was like right when we started the podcast. So just bringing him back into the fold.
We build to that, you see, Tommy. We build to that.
My prediction for the score is going to be high scoring. I'm going to go 35-33. I think the Seahawks edge it out. They don't cover, but I think it'll be close.
We're favored by 3, right?
We're favored by 3, so it's considered a wash. But I feel like they should give extra points when it's a Thursday night game. I really hate Thursday night games.
Why?
I
don't like them in general, but
I hate the short week when it's your team's turn. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, coming off a bye is one thing, but sheesh.
Yeah.
I do find it like annoying for my life schedule because I have no willpower to not watch football. And like I said, like the games come on at weird times for me. So like Thursday night game is Friday daytime. So, I end up Monday's a wash because I have to stay up all Sunday night until Monday morning watching football. Then there's the Monday night game. So Tuesday's sort of, like Monday night football finishes at Tuesday at like 1:30 here. So I can't do anything the first half of my Tuesday. Then they put on Thursday football, which is like the middle of the day on Friday. So you got 3 days in my week now that I can't do anything anymore because football season.
Can't do anything.
Just can't do anything, man.
Just throw your hands up in there.
My Mondays I wake up. My Mondays I go to sleep after the last football game. I wake up at 4 hours later and I go to dodgeball, and that's my day.
Nice.
It's a great Monday.
It's a good Monday.
Sounds like
it means for a 4-day work week. Well, that means I work all weekend, but anyway, it just kind of messes up with my schedule. Get rid of Thursday football, please.
Yes. Who's going to score more touchdowns, Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson, Zeb?
Russell.
Okay. Ross, who you got?
Murray, the little fat baby.
I'm giving an asterisk on my prediction. If we have Carlos Hyde, Russell Wilson will score less touchdowns because we're actually going to be able to run a little bit. So Kyler Murray wins by default. If there is no running back in this game, then Russell Wilson's going to have to score them all.
Exactly.
Who's going to have more highlight sacks avoided, Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson?
Murray.
Is that,
I'm gonna go Russell Wilson.
I feel like this is a game that Russ could display his athleticism. I think he will run it for a little bit more, which will lead us into this next prediction. Who's going to have more rushing yards, Kyler Murray or Seahawks running back, Zeb?
Kyler.
I oddly feel like rushing is going to be like a point of emphasis. I think Pete Carroll's kind of pissed off.
I hope so.
So I'm going to go with the Seahawks running backs, like whoever that is, like Tony probably is going to play running back.
I'm kind of with you. I feel that in order for the Seahawks to play their best version of their game, they're going to need to run the ball a lot, and that means that they're going to rely on whatever running backs they can get. Who's going to see more targets, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, or Hopkins on the Cardinals?
DeAndre Hopkins.
No, it has to be Hopkins. He'll have 10 or 12 targets, right?
At least.
Remember, Tyler Lockett had 200 yards on 15 catches and 3 touchdowns the last times they faced off.
I kind of assume they've learned their lesson. But if they did not, that is a good point.
You know what? I want to see a big game out of DK Metcalf. I'm going to project DK Metcalf is very upset after that last game. It was the most upset I've ever seen him after game, even when he's made some mistakes. I think that he and Russ are going to devise a plan, and they're going to take advantage. DK Metcalf is going to have the most targets in the game.
Yeah, dude, he was not happy.
No, not at all. Under. Oh, go ahead.
I didn't like what's his name. Troy Aikman kept talking about how mad DK Metcalf was as well, but I didn't notice what was happening. I didn't see it.
There was one play where they DK Metcalf, they'd been talking about him getting blanketed all the game by Jalen Ramsey. So the one time that he wasn't lined up against Ramsey, he went in and went like kind of go route, so he's just by himself on the sideline. And Russ threw him, and he got the ball in his fingertips.
Oh, okay.
And then there was another play when they were trying to drive, and Russ ended up not being able to see him, and that's the one where DK Metcalf was like really upset and like saying like, "Can't you see me?" and kind of mouthing. He wasn't yelling at anyone particular, but he was definitely frustrated.
It was the most frustrated I've seen him look at, since he's been playing.
Because he beat his guy and he was wide open, but Russ just missed him barely, which is something we rarely see.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because that was like Russ had another ball that he missed to Tyler Lockett, where that could have been a touchdown as well. So, speaking of bombs, over under 2.5 Hail Marys shown from previous games. We know that they're going to show Kyler Murray's Hail Mary. We think there's a chance that they'll counter that with a couple of Russell Wilson's Hail Marys. But are we going to see more than 2.5 replays of a Hail Mary from either of their previous games?
Other than the Hail Mary, that doesn't feel like a big part of our wins. Like, we have like drives that they're not usually Hail Marys. Like
it's just the Hail Mary, but they love to show it. What?
I don't think that they're going to focus much on it, just because it doesn't play out very well for the narrative. Because we don't do a lot of Hail Marys, or we don't in that situation. We usually run the ball down and we have like a normal play from the 15, not from the 50. So
yeah, but the Hail Mary is such a part of our lore.
It is.
They love.
There's been like Hail Marys that weren't really Hail Marys, that were close. I mean, like, you could arguably say that Curse had a sort of a Hail Mary, not a Hail Mary exactly, but it's getting there. I'm going to go under.
More like an Our Father.
like sort of like a first communion.
A drive-by blessing is what we'll call it. I'm going to go under. I think to Ross's point, Seahawks really haven't had to Hail Mary themselves into a win since the Hail Mary. Also, Zeb saying the same thing. So I'm going to say under.
I'm going to go over because I think it's going to be a close game, and it's going to be close enough where they're going to be start talking about it at the end, and then they'll show it again.
Interesting. I could see that.
Yeah, you could well be right.
Our last prediction for the game is over under 3.5 offensive starters missing. So this is kind of a gimme because we already have 2 starters, or 1 starter we know is going to be out, which is Ethan Posick. But are there going to be more offensive starters missing in this game Thursday night with that short turnaround? Tyler Lockett is got a knee sprain, but they say he's a go. Chris Carson is limited in practice. He didn't practice on Monday. 3.5 over under. What do you think, Zeb?
Sounds like Carson's not going to go, but I still don't think that's going to get us to 4. So I'll say under.
Okay.
A lot of things that have to go wrong to get to 4 at this point. So I'm going to go under.
I'm going to be optimistic and agree with you guys, because if we get to a 4th missing starter, that means we're losing probably Upati, a running back, Tyler Lockett. That would be really depressing. But, it's possible. I'm still going to say under, and that's my final prediction for the day. Shout out to You Love Nick Tana. Nick Tana is a Falcons fan, and I was telling him on another friend's stream that Matt Ryan is basically Phillip Rivers minus the kids, and I stand by that.
What?
And the goofy face.
Matt Ryan is like a poor man's what's his name? Deadpool.
Ryan Reynolds?
Yeah.
Matt Reynolds.
Yeah, poor man's Ryan Reynolds.
Poor man's.
And I want to emphasize, it doesn't mean that I think that Matt Ryan is a bad quarterback. Phillip Rivers is also not a bad quarterback. I don't think that they're top god level QBs though. That's what I would say.
Agree.
All right. So sorry, Nick Tana, for jumping into the stream at the very end. I just want to put it out there, document what I said, and I stand by it. Please feel free to send me mean tweets or respond again.
Dox him.
Yeah, you could dox me. I'm pretty easy to find. I don't do a very good job of hiding myself. But gentlemen, that is the podcast of the day. Any shout outs?
Shout out and rest in peace to Bruce Swedeen, audio engineer who recorded and mixed Thriller and Bad.
Those are great albums.
The best.
You could say they're
not familiar with them. I don't have any particular awesome shout outs this week. Shout outs to all the people who are shouting down the Trump lawyers with their frivolous lawsuits. Because
for 25.
Whatever side you're on, man, like now you're just damaging U.S. democracy, and it's just dumb.
Frivolous indeed.
I had one other shout out. Oh, to the car dealership today. They were pretty awesome. Picked us up, took us to took me over to the test drive, and pretty cool.
Ooh.
I was just getting a really simple kind of car because I'm an old man, but there was a Porsche in the parking lot that I was tempted to test drive, but I resisted temptation.
Nice.
So I'm done with resisting things for the year.
We'll have Ross send some pics. And
no, dude, I'm not getting any cool car that's worth sending pics. It's like super boxy, like designed to have maximum interior space. Nothing cool.
That speaks to my sensibility, Ross. I love it. Shout out to Tony, to Nick Tana, to Tommy for joining us on the chat. We are the Hawkscast podcast. With me is Zeb and Ross. Check us out on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast and Seahawks For Him. Love to hear what you guys have to say, so definitely continue to check us out. We appreciate all the support, and we wish everyone a Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.